Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Monster Hunter World. More specifically, we're going to be talking about another one of my Charge Blade builds. This particular build is called Charged Elements, which is quite a different name from the previous build called Thud on the Table, which some of you guys will know what that is about, and if you don't know, well, then you would have to have been in the live stream previously to learn about it, or you can come to the live stream later down the line and ask me about it, and I will tell you. I will not do so on YouTube, though, but anyway... moving on, the point of this particular build is to actually take advantage of elemental damage as much as possible, because I've noticed a bit of a tendency right now in Monster Hunter World, and that is to go elementalist for a lot of the weapons in the game. And I understand why. These weapons quite simply generate a lot more damage, but I still feel there is a bit of a different playstyle to be had with elements, and also due to the fact that a lot of these elemental weapons actually have better affinity stats than the really high raw damage weapons. So I like to focus on that particular aspect of it. Now, this particular build, I will be showing you the version, the fire version of Charged Elements, but Charged Elements can be used with just about any element that you want, so long as you respect some of the requirements that I will set forth here. So, let's get this started. First, we have a weapon, which is the Alberion Blade, which not only is a weapon that I really like from an aesthetic standpoint, it is also a charge blade that, in my opinion, is really, really good. Coming in at 684 attack for base damage, 20% affinity, and 240 fire damage, which we will be increasing quite a bit, by the way. But like I said, you can swap the weapon around. You just have to make sure that you reach as close as possible to the elemental damage cap. I will be talking a little bit more about that further on to the build. Now let's move on to the next piece. So right here we have the Rathalos Helm Beta. Now, depending on your own personal playstyle, you might actually want to bring in the critical boost version. So I'm talking about the Azure Rathalos Helm. I think it's called Wrath Soul Helm Beta if you want to go that route. But I personally wanted to get as much attack as I could possibly get as well, and I felt like I needed to move way too many things around. I already have to consider different stats like artillery as well as capacity. So for the purpose of the Charge Blade build, I was like, let's just focus on attack and let's not spread our skills all over the place. So I decided not to go with critical boost. So we got the Rathalos Helm Beta. It's going to give us 2 of attack boost. After that, we got the Rathalos Male Beta, which is going to give us the 2 weakness exploit, essentially allowing us to not use the Dragon King eye patch that everybody is using, because we wanted to get this 2-piece Rathalos set. For those of you who do not know, 2-piece Rathalos set gives you critical element, which essentially means elemental damage will deal additional damage whenever you happen to crit. And since we are going to be relying a little bit on the higher affinity of this weapon, as well as the weakness exploit that we are going to be having, I figured, you know, let's try and get as much critical damage as possible, and let's try and really squeeze out as much damage of our element as possible. So that's why we went with 2 Rathalos pieces, and these 2 Rathalos pieces are giving us the critical element as well as weakness exploit and attack. Now, moving onwards, we have a very familiar piece over here, the Lumu Van Braces for 2 levels of artillery. I eventually would like to swap these out, because these, in my opinion, are a big problem in the build, but it's like the best thing that I can put there with artillery while still maintaining all of the other skills. So that's the reason why they're there, but I'm not particularly happy about them, and depending on my luck with decorations in the future, I might be swapping them out. So, just letting you guys know. But yeah, essentially Lumu Van Braces for the 2 points in artillery. Then we got the Nergigante Coil for that sweet attack boost, and also that tier 2, not tier 2, the level 2 decoration slot. And then we have the Dorogama Greaves for the capacity boost, because I still don't have a capacity decoration. So I'm pretty much stuck with Dorogama Greaves if I want to have capacity boost as well as artillery. And then we round the build out with attack boost, the attack charm level 3, which is going to pretty much max out our attack boost. Now, when it comes to decorations, in the Dorogama Greaves, once again, we have the Artillery Jewel. This is the same thing as the Thud on the table. On the Nergigante Coil, we have the Tenderizer Jewel, which is giving us the final point and weakness exploit, so that essentially we now have the 50% increased affinity on weak spots, which in this particular case with the weapon that we have as well as the rest of the skills is essentially going to put our affinity at around 78% whenever you are hitting a weak spot, which is going to give you quite a few crits, which is pretty damn good in my opinion, particularly for the playstyle that I take with this particular build here. Then on the Rathalos Male Beta, we have a Blaze Jewel 1. Now this is a very important switch from the previous build, because we are trying to get as close as possible to the elemental cap of this weapon. I might be doing a video soon discussing elemental caps for those of you who do not know how to check it out or how to even reach elemental cap. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are actually putting way more points into elemental damage than they actually should, because each weapon has a relatively short elemental cap. So even though the fire attack skill caps out at level 5, there is very little benefit in taking that skill all the way up to level 5 with the weapon that I'm using. As a matter of fact, I get super close to the cap of fire damage by just using 2 Blaze Jewels, okay? As a matter of fact, I get so close to the cap, I don't even use a third one because it would only add an addition of 10 fire damage, which is very, very little, so I just decided not to do it. But anyway, on the Rathalos Helm Beta, I have an Expert Jewel to increase our affinity a little bit. This particular jewel right here is a bit of a throwaway. You can really put whatever you want in there. It's just I figured, well, let's squeeze in a little bit more of affinity, but realistically on this slot, just put whatever the hell you want. And then on the weapon itself, we put a Blaze Jewel level 1. Now I did mention that one of the big differences between this build and the Thud on the table is that you really want to get as close as possible to the elemental cap of your weapon, which is why these are a couple of gems that you will have to swap as you exchange the element for something else. So say, for instance, if you are going to swap this over for the Kadachi version of the Charge Blade, which is the Kadachi Kaina 2 or 3, I'm not exactly sure where that particular blade ends up at this moment, you will want to swap the Blaze Jewels naturally for Bolt Jewels to increase lightning damage, and you might even have to put 3 Bolt Jewels. I really don't exactly remember what the elemental cap on the Kadachi Kaina is, but make sure that you reach that elemental cap, or at least as close as you can to the elemental cap, to really take advantage of the additional elemental damage. It is just something that you really have to do to take advantage of an elemental damage weapon, at least in my personal opinion. So now when we look at the skills, once the build is pretty much complete, you will notice that we have maximum attack boost at level 7. We got weakness exploit level 3. We have artillery level 3. We only have level 2 of fire attack because, like I said, if you take it to level 3, it is only really going to give you 10 more fire attack, which in the grand scheme of things is like 1 raw attack, so it's not even that much. So it's like, don't worry about that final level of fire attack if you are using the same weapon that I am, and just get that other skill point into whatever the hell you want. The critical eye 1, which you can replace for whatever you want, essentially, and capacity boost level 1 from the Dorogama Greaves. And finally, we also have a set bonus in here, which is the critical element, which, like I said, whenever you happen to crit, you're going to get increased elemental damage. Now, like I did mention at the start of this video, that this particular weapon has a bit of a different playstyle, and that is most definitely the case, because the main difference between this build and the Thud on the table is that with the Thud, you are going to want to just dispatch your elemental discharges as fast as you possibly can, because you have very little benefit to actually being in sword mode, because when you are in sword mode, your damage is not going to be impressive. You're not going to be critting all that often. So you really that build is really good for this charging super amped elemental discharges. So you want to just get those as fast as you can and unleash them on the monster. With this build, it's a little bit different. What you want to do is you actually want to stay in sword mode as often as possible, because this provides you with a more nimble playstyle. Whereas with the Thud on the table, I feel like you're constantly looking for that opening in the monster to just unleash super amped elemental discharge. I see this build as you essentially being able to beat the crap out of the monster while still in sword mode, because you're going to be critting quite a number of of times. As a matter of fact, you definitely want to use condensed elemental slash as often as possible so that you have additional file charges coming off, so that you have additional elemental damage coming off, because this build is going to take advantage of all that elemental damage. So stay in sword mode and essentially set up the charge to do 2 super amped elemental discharges in a row. That is going to be your objective. It's not always going to be possible, as you guys will clearly see me a lot of times here go for just 1 super amped elemental discharge, but the ideal playstyle, in my opinion, is fill up your files. After you fill up your files, charge your shield. After that, fill up your files again. On this time, when you fill up the files, do the condensed element slash in order to get the elemental damage on the sword. And after that, charge your files again before spending them. You can do this. So you basically will have your 6 files stored. You can still gather more energy so that once they are read for a second time, you're going to have 6 file stores and they're going to be read. Then you unleash a super amped elemental discharge, instantly reload, and you'll be able to unleash another one, so that if you happen to stagger the monster, you already have another super amped elemental discharge ready to go. And the good thing about this is, like I said, while you are charging these 2 super amped elemental discharges, you're going to be critting all over the place, you're going to be dealing additional elemental damage all over the place, and it allows you for a more nimble playstyle because you don't have to constantly be swapping into axe mode to bring out the super amped elemental discharge. So it's a different playstyle. It's a playstyle that I personally like a little bit more than Thud on the Table, but Thud on the Table will be the one that brings out the more impressive numbers. However, the elemental version of this build is going to be a little bit more consistent with the damage during sword mode. So at the end of the day, it's all a playstyle preference. I like this one. And the reason why I call the charged elements in plural is because you can adapt this to any element that you want. Just make sure that you get the decorations to get as close to the cap as possible, and then just go for it. What do you guys thought about this build? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.